As a social entrepreneur myself, I get it. Deciding what to focus on to create change in the world can feel like quite a challenge. You're looking for just the right issue, and at times it can feel like there are way too many things that need your attention. Right? Everything from the ice caps melting to police brutality feels urgent. But as you think about all the possibilities, the question you're asking yourself is, which one will sustain my passion over time and give me the best chance to give back to the world? In this video, I'll give you some tips as I answer these questions and answer this question of how to overcome analysis paralysis to find your focus as an entrepreneur. All right, so let's dive in. Analysis paralysis. I'm going to give you the definition of this term. Analysis paralysis describes an individual or group process when overanalyzing or overthinking a situation can cause forward motion or decision making to become paralyzed, meaning that no solution or course of action is decided upon. What that means is that when you think too much, you stop making forward progress. And this is something that I know many of us have experienced at one time or another in our lives. When it comes to finding your focus as a social entrepreneur, these thoughts sound like, there are too many things that I could do, or there are too many issues in the world, or there are too many challenges that we need to tackle. I don't know what to focus on. And that can be a real challenge because it stops us from moving forward with the goals that we have of creating change in the world. So let's approach this differently, right? We can't let analysis paralysis stop us. So instead, let's focus on a different approach that we can take to actually overcome analysis paralysis and actually answer this question of what we want to focus on as social entrepreneurs. I'm going to take you through an alternative framework, an alternative way of doing that. And to do that, I want to tell you a story about my own life, my own journey as a social entrepreneur, and give you a little bit of backstory to help you understand how this applies. So taking you back, when I was a kid, I knew I wanted to create change in the world. Right? After some early events in my life, I had already decided I wanted to impact other people in some way, shape, or form. I wanted to be an inventor. My brother passed away when I was young, and that led to me really rethinking, what is the meaning of the things that I want to invent and want to create? And it led to me heading down this path towards social entrepreneurship. So at that time, I didn't really have a clear idea of who I wanted to work with, but I did know, I think the people who I would be interested in serving live in other countries. And so for me, it was people in far off lands that I wanted to go and design products for. I felt like there were all sorts of problems that we weren't focused on for those individuals that I could begin to address. And so what I did was I basically went out and I did that work. And of course, there's a whole bunch of time and there's space and there's energy in between, but I looked for opportunities to go and do that work. And when I was a student in college, I had my first opportunity. I designed a product. I studied engineering. You may have studied something else. You may be studying something else right now. That's perfectly fine. But basically, I used the skills I had in that moment to go out and actually do that work. And so for me, that meant going to Nicaragua to go do research on how access to electricity affects quality of life and designing a product that actually began to serve people in that location. Right? That was at least its intention, its design. Right? So I went out and I began to answer this question of, is this the space that I want to work in? I met new people, made new friends, had a ton of experiences, which were really formative and powerful for me. But I also started to see through that experience that working in developing countries and other countries in general wasn't the place that I was going to ultimately be applying my energy or wanted to apply my energy. And I learned this through a few different factors. While my experience was incredible while I was abroad, I also realized that I wanted to be around my family more often. Right? I wanted to serve people who were hurting right in my own backyard if possible. I wanted to make an impact here and now. And I had a bunch of experiences as I came to this realization. The first is that I founded a company to actually create wind turbines to create power generating devices for other countries. But when I founded that company, I realized I didn't have the funds to move to another country at the time, and ended up shifting my model to focus on the United States. So that in some ways was the first indication to me that, hey, well, I had this vision, this dream of serving people abroad. so far I haven't been able to figure out how to do that. And as I thought more and more about, okay, well, what would I need to do to organize my life in a way where I would end up going abroad to serve people, it didn't feel like the right fit for me, right? I wanted to be here. I wanted to be near my family, like I said. I wanted to travel off to other places, but to live in those countries wasn't the lifestyle that I was looking for. So I set up this company, right? And it took me down this path. And then because I shifted to a customer group who didn't have the problem I was trying to solve, that company failed. And when it did, I leaned into this feeling, right? This feeling of saying, well, I want to serve people who are here in my backyard. And I decided to shift my focus to the United States. So when I did that, it was in some ways liberating because it was aligned with this realization I'd had about where I wanted to focus. But I also had a similar challenge. What do I focus on? Who do I want to focus on? Right? These are the questions that you are ultimately asking. And I had done work when I was in college as well with folks who had disabilities. And I decided as I was asking this question of where do I want to, who do I want to focus on? I said, I'm going to start there. I'm going to start with folks who live with disabilities because I know that when it comes to living autonomously and accomplishing what they've set out to do with their lives, that there are a number of challenges due to the fact that the world was not designed for them. What that means is that there are items that people in wheelchairs can't reach because the items are too high, or tasks that many people take for granted that are hard to do without use of your fingers, or challenges that someone with visual impairment faces when navigating a building because the maps that are available rely on sight to use them. It doesn't mean that a map can't exist in another form, it just doesn't exist in another form. And when we ask why, right, when I began to ask why do these things not exist, I recognize that it's not because they're unsolvable problems often, it's because the market forces we have, the market that we live in, is one that seeks to make profit where possible, make as much profit as possible, as much money from any given innovation it's going to come up with as possible. And it doesn't see a lot of opportunity to create a lot of money from solving individual custom problems that people with disabilities face. But I didn't feel like that should keep someone from getting to where they wanted to get to in life. And this idea of working with folks with disabilities really aligned with my desire to work with those who weren't being focused on, the people that we weren't designing things for, the people we weren't addressing. The same reason that I went to Nicaragua to work with folks there, or was focused on people in developing countries, was I felt like those were challenges that we could begin to address, and we weren't giving them the full thought process that we could, the full set of resources that we could apply to those issues in order to begin addressing them. I wanted to bring that to them. And when I thought about folks with disabilities in the United States, I wanted to bring that same energy to those challenges as well. So what did I do, right? I made a decision. I said, well, this is a group that I could work with. This is a group who has challenges that I know exist. This is a group who has challenges that I could begin to address with the abilities that I have now. And so I started a program called Design the Future to address these issues. That program teaches high school students how to design products and apps for people with disabilities by working alongside people with disabilities. And what I do, and what my team now does, is we guide those high school students through that process so that they begin to address these issues in the world. Right? That is how we manage to figure out a way to make a sustainable system for solving these problems that the market doesn't solve. All right. And so now I've built a team around doing that, and we run this program for 5 years. But I've kept honing this question: what do I want to do? Who do I ultimately want to work with, right? I'm one individual, and as I spend my time, how do I want to spend my time serving others? Who do I want to serve? So I've now, I've gone from working in industrializing nations, developing countries, right? Designing product there. That business that I started to sustain that impact failed. I've now come back to the United States. I'm focusing on another issue, which is focused on designing for disability. I've built a team who is continuing to run and work on that issue. I actually get to continue to work on that issue as well, but I'm still asking this question. who do I want to work with? What issues do I want to address? And so from there, after, really launching Design the Future, and in the midst of launching that, I also created this consulting firm, DC Design, which is the firm that I run now. And we have had the chance over the last 4 years to work on all sorts of issues. We've worked with foster youth. We've worked with people who are in jail. We've worked with people who are homeless. We've worked with immigrants. We've worked on the issues that each of these groups face, doing foster system reform, criminal justice reform, housing reform, designing apps for immigrant communities to connect them to the resources they need to raise great kids. These are all different issues I've had a chance to now work on a bit through my process. And as I've continued forward, I've learned which of these issues are the ones that I want to focus on most, and where I can think I can apply my gifts in a way to create the biggest impact in the world. Right? And so while I still work on all of these issues, as I've gone through this process, I've honed in more and more to recognize that the place where I think I can use my gifts on the issues that really, really resonate with me the most are issues that deeply affect Black America. And so as I continue forward, those are issues that I will keep working on. It turns out that the foster care and criminal justice system and healthcare system and challenges that immigrants face overlap with issues that affect Black America as well. But I am constantly honing in more and more on what my answer to this question is. All right. So that's a little bit of the backstory here, right? So we started this video talking about analysis paralysis, decision paralysis, choice paralysis, this thing that stops us from making forward progress. And I said, I want to offer you a different model for how to move forward with answering this question of what you want to do as a social entrepreneur. And the moral of my story is that to figure this out, you have to start. All right, just start. List out the top 3 things that you want to focus on, and then from there, pick one and get started, and begin to make progress toward one of these issues. Right, whichever one you can imagine a way of making progress toward today, that's the one that for you to start with, and you can start heading down this path. Because here's the thing. Through every space that I've worked in, every group of people that I've gotten the chance to work with and serve, whether those are folks in developing countries or people who are living in poverty here in the United States of America, I've learned new lessons that have helped me hone and answer this question of what I really want to focus on. Along the journey, I've come up with new ideas based on what I've learned, which have fed into my actions in the future. So the lessons I learned, the frameworks I learned, the tools, the processes that I learned when I was living and working on the countryside, very briefly, but in Nicaragua, are some of the frameworks and tools I still bring to issues when I'm working on things affecting Black America, foster youth, people who are in jail, etc. The only way to really figure out the answer to certain questions in life is to make progress. That's really what this comes down to. When you're an entrepreneur, there is no Google search that can give you the answer to some of the questions that you have. There is no amount of customer interviews. There's no talking to other human beings. There's no getting and learning from someone else's experience that can really make clear for you the path that you're supposed to walk down. At some point, the only way to really figure out the answer and learn is to begin to move down that path. And then from there, you let the path teach you what you need to know. So that is my message for you today. And if this resonates with you, if you're saying, man, I do need to get started, I've been going back and forth between all these different options for so long, there are 2 ways that I can offer you here today to get started. The first is if you are a high school student. If you're a high school student, I told you about this program called Design the Future. We teach high school students to design products and apps, and then launch those products and apps into the world to make an impact on the lives of people with disabilities. And you get to work directly with project partners who are folks with disabilities to design and come up with the best solution for that sort of issue. So that is one possibility. If you are a high school student, then I would say join Design the Future. And the way to find that program is to go to You Design the Future, YOU designthefuture.com, and you can apply today. The application is currently open. And I would say apply as soon as you can. We accept students on a rolling basis, and when we get to a certain number of students, we may close that application. So submit your application as soon as you can. The second is if you are an adult, you are older than high school, sign up for our course called Design Thinking Fundamentals for Social Change. And what this course is it is a 7-part video series course that guides you through the step-by-step process you need to take to create meaningful and lasting change in other people's lives. So what it does is it guides you through a process of saying, well, which problem do you want to focus on, right? I walk you through a process for scoping that out. You scope down to an individual problem, and then you go through a process called design thinking, right? Which uses 5 key phases in order to work directly with the people that you want to serve to produce some sort of outcome that alters their lives in the future. The focus of this course is to say, can you create an impact in the lives of 1 to 3 people to start with? Because that is actually the foundation for lasting social change. If you can create an impact in the lives of 1 to 3 people, then you have the keys for creating an impact in the lives of 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, 1 million people, because you now understand some of what it takes to do it for a small group first. And that is where I started off on my journey as a social impact designer. And I've worked on things that affect 1.9 million people all the way down to 1 person. I think that it would be a really great opportunity for anyone who is pondering these questions and really wants the extra level of motivation and accountability to get started. For the fundamentals course, there's also a coaching session that you can sign up for where you can actually meet with me on a bi-weekly basis or as needed in order to get some extra guidance along the way. So if both those things sound interesting to you, then I would say go ahead and sign up. The way to sign up for Design Thinking Fundamentals for Social Change is you go to DC Design, as in D, dog, cat, Design ltd.com, and from there you can follow the links to get to the Design Thinking Fundamentals for Social Change page. All right, that is what I have for you today. That is how you overcome analysis paralysis, and the answer is ultimately you need to get started on something, right? You pick something, you pick anything, recognizing that the path that you're going to start on is not necessarily where you're going to end up, but that where you start is going to teach you something really valuable about where you need to go next. And that the only way to make real progress as an entrepreneur, a social innovator, is to start. All right, that's what I got for you today. If this was helpful, like, follow, subscribe, sign up for those courses. Just join me on this journey generally. If this is useful information for you, I go live every day, and I would love to be a part of this journey with you as well. All right, talk to you later.